Hello and welcome to my show of True Audio Files. Today we're going to do part one of the Miles Davis box set. Show it to you here. If you want, you can go back and view my unboxing of it, but here it is right here. We're going to go over the first three titles of the box set. So we're going to go over In a Silent Way, Bitches Brew, and A Tribute to Jack Johnson, and basically do a troubleshoot. Do a sound quality shootout between them. I've got a couple of different pressings. Some I've got more pressings of than others, but we'll go over that in due time. So I'm going to just kind of get... The other thing I want to talk about is I'm probably going to do the second part of this video in a couple of weeks, because I also want to get to another thing that came out recently, which is the Van Halen box set, or the Van Hagar years, if you will. Cut by Bernie Grundman. Claims it was by the cut from the analog master tapes, or sort of insinuates that, so I'm not sure if that's true or not, but regardless, that is what's going to happen. I'm going to try to do a shootout with some of those, because I do have some of the early pressings of at least 3 of the 4 albums. So anyways, just wanted to kind of give a little teaser for that, but let's go through and talk about Miles Davis and the Electric Years box set from Vinyl Me Please. So first up on the agenda is In a Silent Way. So this is the glossy Vinyl Me Please version. And then what I compared it to is I have a early pressing. It's not quite a first pressing, but it's a extremely early copy. It's certainly, I would not be surprised if it's a second or at most third pressing, but super early on in the process. So those are the only two that I have of In a Silent Way on vinyl. I should get the MoFi. I have it on Super Audio CD, but not on vinyl from MoFi. So, but so as I usually do on these, I basically listen to the new reissue first, all the way through. Try to figure out, you know, what songs would sound best to do a sound quality comparison to, and you know, just kind of figure it from there. And in this particular case, I kind of went with the first side, the Peaceful. And that was probably my one that I decided I wanted to go with first. So in terms of doing the sound quality shootout between the two copies. What I will say right off the bat is there was very, very, very little difference between the two. And I had a very hard time making out the differences. You know, the Vinyl Me Please one of the things I was actually very pleased about in general, and this is going to be the case for all the ones I've listened to so far, is actually the pressing was actually pretty good. It was mostly pretty quiet. There are a couple of things here and there, but overall it was pretty quiet. That being said, so the Vinyl Me Please was a little bit quieter, but you know, the soundstage width, the soundstage depth, everything about that aspect of it was, I had a hard time hearing a difference. I don't know if there was one. The biggest difference, and it was very, very minor at best, was the high end. There was definitely more high end in the reissue, the Vinyl Me Please, than there was on the original or early pressing. Again, very subtle difference. I did not notice much, and it took me a while to see if I could try to find any other differences. And quite frankly, if there were any other differences, they were pretty subtle. So it was pretty faithful to the original or early pressings of the release. So when it comes to In a Silent Way, you know, I might give a slight edge to the Vinyl Me Please just because it's a little quieter, and I actually liked the little bit more treble. So take that for what it's worth and what your preferences tend to be. So next up, had Bitches Brew. So here is the Vinyl Me Please. Again, super glossy cover, you know, with a gatefold, and very nice. And then I actually have an actual first pressing, but to save some time, I know that I had done an A/B comparison for them before. I don't think I've done it on my channel, but if I find that I did, I'll post a shortcut to that shootout. But I don't know if I did. Regardless, I did have that. I do have a first pressing, and then I also have the mobile fidelity. Mobile fidelity has the same inner gatefold, inner piece to the gatefold as the Vinyl Me Please. And I'm going to probably be going back and forth on my notes just to make sure I don't miss anything. So for this one, I did Spanish Key. I felt that one was a really good track to kind of do an A/B comparison to. And again, these were very, very, very close. I would say even closer, at least from an EQ standpoint, that in my opinion, than the previous A/B comparisons. I would say that the biggest difference that I noticed was there's more of a 3D feel and sound to the soundstage, in my opinion. So which seems to be the case that happens often with mobile fidelities in comparison to other versions I've heard. Not sure what they do differently, or maybe it's the equipment they're using, but I definitely get a feel for like a little bit more of a air or space between the instruments and more of a 3D feel to the sound. And I think that the soundstage went a little bit more beyond the speakers than the Vinyl Me Please. But again, these are super subtle. I would say overall, again, similar to In a Silent Way, very, very close to one another. Very little difference. But I would still probably give the edge to the mobile fidelity in this case, as opposed to the Vinyl Me Please in the first one, since I don't have the mobile fidelity to compare to it. But that being said, in this particular case, I would say maybe slightly give an edge to the mobile fidelity. Now, the one thing that I will also say that I was expecting was that there would be at least a little bit more hiss in the Vinyl Me Please versions, just because they were copies of the master, where mobile fidelity took the original master and digitized it, so the hiss factor wouldn't be as much, so it wouldn't be as a generational loss. If it was there, it was pretty subtle of a difference. I know going from like a original master tape to another reel-to-reel master copy, there's not going to be a ton of loss, but anyways, I didn't really notice much of that at all, or I didn't really notice much, if any, of the typical signs of generational loss on tape that you would typically get when you go step down in a generation. So that's kind of the good news with the Vinyl Me Please, and I think Ryan K. Smith did a phenomenal job on these. So overall, and so that's Bitches Brew. Next up is Jack Johnson. So with that one here, I had a couple more that I went on, and I'll have full transparency here. I have not listened to this album much, and kind of wish I have had listened to it a lot more recently. I mean, I've had the complete Jack Johnson sessions on CD, and I do have a couple of variations that I'll show here of the actual album, but I have not listened to this one much, and I'm not really sure why, because, again, the Electric Years tend to be some of my favorite recordings. My favorite Miles Davis albums are in this era. So, anyway, that being said, so here's the Vinyl Me Please. Glossy again. And on the back, it has what I found out was the original cover for the album. And I say that because I do have, and I didn't realize that what it was until I opened it up and looked at it a little more closely, is I have a first pressing of the album. And it's actually listed as a Masterworks soundtrack. And so the label is actually even a little bit different as well. And I'll show you that. It's a gray label, which they usually have on their, what they classify as their Masterworks series of stuff, typically for like classical music and stuff like that. But as you can see, but it's certainly a first pressing, and the jacket's pretty beat up, but the actual record is in pretty darn good shape. So I was very happy to see that. So again, so that's the first pressing of Jack Johnson. Then I have the Mobile Fidelity. So, you know, they use, again, the original cover. They put the second cover kind of on the inside, on the gatefold here for you. And the back cover from the original, I think it's the original. Yeah, from the original pressing. So this one here was kind of one of those, it kind of was a mixed bag in terms of what I would prefer. You know, I would say, you know, the MoFi had deeper bass. The Vinyl Me Please still had good bass, but the Mobile Fidelity seemed to have a little bit deeper bass. So, which I'm a big bass guy, so anytime you got deeper bass, I'm always in for that. There was also a little bit less hiss on the Mobile Fidelity, but I also think that, you know, maybe there was a little bit more treble in terms of the treble EQ on the Vinyl Me Please, so that might account for some of the hiss, and it wasn't a dramatic difference, just a subtle difference. But I think what you also got from having that extra treble is it kind of had a little bit more punch on the Vinyl Me Please. Not a lot, but a little bit more, which, you know, was most notable. Basically, I listened to the first side, which basically is called Right Off. It's the whole side, and kind of more of a a rocking tune. Probably one of the more rock-orientated tracks by Miles, maybe influenced heavily by Jimi Hendrix and his wife. I think Betty was his wife around this time. It was right around this time, anyways. But regardless, but one of the things that the Mobile Fidelity had is it had, back to what I was talking about before on the Bitches Brew, there was a little bit more of a 3D-ness, or, you know, kind of a 3D sound to the MoFi that the Vinyl Me Please didn't. The first pressing kind of sounded a little bit flatter. Not sure it went quite as high in the high end as the others. It still had a decent amount of treble, but definitely had more mid-range to it, which that actually and in my opinion, the ride cymbal specifically, and maybe even the hi-hat to a certain extent, kind of benefited from that for a little bit, because I felt with both the Vinyl Me Please and the Mobile Fidelity, they didn't, the cymbals sounded good, but they didn't sound quite as natural maybe as they did on the first pressing. And I would say also the Mobile Fidelity definitely had higher highs than even the Vinyl Me Please, in my opinion, or at least that's the impression I got from it. But so, preferred the cymbal sound on the first pressing. I prefer the 3D-ness and the deeper bass on the Mobile Fidelity. But, you know, I would say the Vinyl Me Please kind of went somewhere in between those two. It definitely still had less of a flat sound than the original pressing, but not as much of a 3D sound as the Mobile Fidelity. It kind of landed somewhere in between, so still awesome. I would say if I were to have to choose between them, I would probably give the slight edge to the Mobile Fidelity, just for that 3D sound, for the higher highs, the deeper bass. But overall, you know, the Vinyl Me Please, I think probably, except for the cymbal sound, is a little bit of a step up from the original pressing. But other than that, I'm sorry, the first pressing had, you know, a little bit of an edge in that mid-range, so the naturalness to the cymbals. But beyond that, I would say the Vinyl Me Please had the advantage over the early pressing, but not by a lot. But all of them were spectacular. So, you know, it's really a toss-up, which is always, I shouldn't say always, but often the case with a lot of these, is you're going to find pros and cons to every version. But so far, you know, if I were to, you know, make a choice and say which one would be my favorite, I would say so far it's been the two MoFis for the Jack Johnson and the Bitches Brew. But then in the silent way, I would give the Vinyl Me Please one an advantage. But, you know, I might like the Mobile Fidelity, and I'm probably going to buy it just from my experiences with these other two to see what I think. But, you know, that's my take on the first three records. Love to hear your take if you've done a comparison to any of these, and if you have some versions of the album that are better than the ones that I did comparisons on here. My next part on this I'm going to try to do all the rest of the album. So you got Live Evil, you've got On the Corner, Big Fun, and Get Up With It. And so again, but that's going to probably be in 2 weeks because I really want to get the Van Halen box set done and compare those to the new variations that are out there. So that is everything I've got for today. Let me hear your take. If you liked what you saw here, hit that like button. Thank you for subscribing if you have subscribed. If you haven't, please do so. And leave some comments down below. Let me know what your thoughts are. So you guys have yourself a great rest of the day and a great rest of the week. Thanks a lot.